The Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Pat Mayo Experience. I am not Pat Mayo, as you've probably figured out by this point. I am Garion Thorne, but no worries. We don't need Pat today. We are talking some baseball, a 2019 MLB preview, and we are doing it with the one, the only, also not Pat Mayo.
Also not Pat Mayo.
The Athletics' Chris Meaney. Chris, how's it going, man?
It's great, man. Yeah, it's good to get back with you and talk some more baseball, getting a little bit closer now to the season. Yeah. Pitchers and catchers here, and still some big names available in free agency.
Yeah, a lot of guys still available in free agency. So what we're going to do on today's episode is break down some big name players, generally speaking, top 100 guys by NFBC ADP. A couple of the names just outside the top 100 who are in new places and how that new environment affects their fantasy value heading into 2019. Do want to mention as well, if you guys want to get into a draw for $20 DK, which you have to do, first and foremost, is like the episode. Very easy. One click of the mouse. Then in the comment section, leave your DK handle and tell us who you think is going to be the best free agent signing of 2018 and 2019. Maybe you think Bryce Harper's going to be, you don't know who he signed with yet, but maybe you think someone should sign him. So let us know in the comment section below. Before we get to some of these free agent guys and trade guys, you know, we joke about Harper and Machado not yet signing. Yeah. Something did actually happen earlier this week.
Finally.
Realmuto finally traded for the Marlins. They've been looking to do this. You'd have to think they were looking to do it last season.
Yeah.
So let's say at least a year of trying to find a trade partner for JT Realmuto, generally considered to be maybe not the best catcher in baseball necessarily, but the best catcher in fantasy.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty easy to say. This was one of those rare occasions where we actually just did a mock draft for The Athletic, and he fell to the 6th round of a 12-team mock, and I was kind of surprised by that because you do see some players lose value in drafts when they haven't signed yet because park factors, lineup placement, just the overall, the overall goodness of a team heavily affects fantasy output or projected fantasy output. With Realmuto, it's kind of simple. It's one of these weird scenarios where anywhere he went,
absolutely
anywhere he went, it would have been better. So I was kind of surprised to see him fall, but Citizens Bank is a pretty good place to end up, I would say.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, we'll get into it when we talk about Gene Segura, but it's, Citizens Bank in terms of home runs is the second best ballpark in the last 3 years using park factor. So it's obviously a significant upgrade from Miami and the lineup as well. And, maybe you're listening to us and Harper and Machado have already signed. One's with the Phillies, one's not. Who knows? But I think actually one of them will end up there and the lineup will be even better than what it is, right? They bring in Segura, another year of Hoskins. It's a great lineup. Yeah. And for Realmuto, who he's a good hitter. He's a great hitter, and he can flirt with a 300 average, and he can steal a couple bags here and there, which a lot of catchers don't do. And the Phillies didn't run last year, and, you bring in Segura. I know Andrew McCutchen doesn't steal as much anymore, but he can steal a couple more bags, and maybe this is a team that's going to run a little bit more. So I like it from Philly's standpoint. I was waiting for this for a while. Like, what do you guys – and I thought they'd give up more, to be honest, a little bit. I look at Miami's deals over the past couple of years. I know they had to unload Stanton and Ozuna and Yelich. There's just a lot of guys that they've lost, and that team right now is just – I look up and down that lineup, and I just like, who's their best hitter? Like,
well, it's funny you bring that up.
I don't even know.
So Derek Carty, who runs the bat projection system, he actually, it wasn't a joke in that this was what the bat spit out. This is what his projection system rang to be true, but he used it as a joke, which was they just signed Curtis Granderson to a minor league contract. So he's not even necessarily a lock to make the 25-man roster.
Right.
He had their best projected WOBA at 318.
Yeah, it makes sense.
By his projected system.
Who's their Castro? There's no one it's bad. It's really bad. So
like, I don't hate Brian Anderson, but Brian Anderson's like Anderson a 15 home run hitter. He's going to hit 280.
Yeah, he's actually a guy in a deep league that you can get by. Nobody wants a part of it.
He's got like outfield third base flexibility, which is kind of interesting.
Plug him in a deep format, but from this standpoint, he's still catcher number one. You're right. Yeah. I think maybe doing a draft today, people get maybe more excited. Maybe he goes in the 5th. I'm not one to take these catchers too early. I don't want one in the 5th and 6th. But you're right about the mock we did with the Athletic. There was a little bit of value there. People were waiting at the position position. And, you know, he probably is the safest catcher. He's one of the few that won't hurt you across the board, right? Some of these other catchers that you're going to take flyers on later on are going to hurt you in the average department. They're going to strike out a ton of points.
He's a 5-cat catcher, which is rare.
He can fill out the board for you.
And I will say, too, sometimes in these mocks, we all have a very similar mindset of
we
see a player like that, especially a player in a very popular situation, a very commented on situation in television, and we all kind of want to see how far he'll drop if no one takes him. So maybe it was a little bit of that.
It's like Mondesi. Last time we got together, we talked about that, and we were just like, do we really want to spend the 4th round price tag on Mondesi? Yeah, he's going to steal some bags and whatnot, but I think it was Al Melchior who took him maybe late in the 5th or 6th. Like, I'm actually fine with that.
Yeah, at that point.
Yeah, I mean, if he's going to drop another round, end of the 5th or 6th, like,
I'll take
Billy that
in like the 18th round.
I just plugged. Yeah,
I kept staring at it like I took Trey Turner in the 1st. Do I need Billy? But at a certain point, probably just take Billy Hamilton.
And I didn't really, and I think I took Merrifield in the 4th, which is fine to take care of my stolen bases a little bit. But I was like, yeah, Billy's just hanging around another round. We talked about that before. It's like, whatever. I need a couple of stolen bases. I mean, he'll provide that for me. Yeah,
we'll talk about some of those guys on this episode of the show. The thing with Realmuto too, just to kind of wrap everything up, and as I was saying, just the craziness of he could go anywhere and be better. Like we were talking about, if you look back to last season, it was the first time since 2015 that a team hadn't scored 600 runs. The Marlins were just so bad. And, you know, by baseball prospectuses, park factors, which actually accounts for handedness too, Marlins Park was not only the worst park for right-handed hitters in all of baseball by overall runs factor, it was also the worst home run park by baseball prospectuses factors. And, you know, you look at Realmuto's splits, he wasn't bad at Marlins Park, but his numbers on the road were just so much better. Absolutely. Like, it's for a catcher to be league average as a hitter at home, you take that every time, but he was an elite hitter away from Marlins Park. So everything about this is good for Realmuto.
He might have a career year for him. Like in that lineup, in that ballpark. Yeah, it's a significant upgrade. Yeah,
I would say steals are the only thing you worry about because going into a new situation, a new coaching staff, maybe they're not as aggressive on the base pass.
It's not why you're drafting him though.
But yeah,
it's just an added bonus.
That's a bonus.
Yeah, exactly. It's a nice bonus if he steals you 5 to 10. You're loving that.
Well, let's talk about some other guys who have changed teams this winter, and somebody who stolen bases used to be a bonus too.
It really did, yeah.
Not so much anymore, though. Paul Goldschmidt got an ADP of 20.1 by NFBC right now. He is first baseman 1, if only barely.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting conversation to have about Paul Goldschmidt versus Freddie Freeman, and that's probably the more interesting conversation. We don't have to talk about do we think Paul Goldschmidt's going to be good, because
he's elite.
From June on last season, any worries we had, this guy was a 330 hitter, a 272 ISO. He was fixed. It was all fine.
Yeah.
But the Freeman Goldschmidt thing is just so interesting to me, and in that same mock, I think it's the 17th overall pick, 5th pick in the 2nd round. I wanted to make sure I got one of those guys. And I think that's going to be one of my big draft philosophies this year with how quickly first base falls off. Those two guys are so good, and you can get them in the middle of the 2nd round. It's just a matter of picking which one you want.
Yeah.
I went with Goldschmidt. In a way, I was looking at the numbers later. Maybe I should have taken Freeman, but it's ridiculous, man. You go back the last 3 years. Freddie Freeman is slashing 306, 396, 549 with a 243 ISO. Goldie is 295 with a 401 OBP, 528 slugging percentage with a 233 ISO. They're the same guy. Freeman even stole 10 bases last year.
Freeman even stole, he's got some sneaky speed. I love them both, and I think exactly like you. And I think we had this conversation when we were talking about sleepers and Tyler White or Miggy. We were talking about those guys.
There are guys.
But for me, the drop-off is huge. This is the weakest position, I think, in fantasy at first base, and I want one of them as well. And I actually get bummed when I don't get Freeman or Goldie. And for me, I lean Freeman just slightly. But I mean, for Goldschmidt, you know what you're getting, right? You talk about last season is just a really slow start for him. He was one of the best buy low candidates in fantasy baseball, and everyone was talking about the humidor effect, and maybe that had a little bit to do with it. But he's hit at least 30 home runs in 3 of his last 4 years, at least a 290 average in 6 straight seasons. Yes, you mentioned the stolen bases, 32, 18, 7. He's 31 years old now, but I look at the change away from Arizona. What Arizona obviously still a great hitter's ballpark, but 304 is what he hit on the road for his career. That's his average. And then last year, 339. Like, he's a good hitter away from Arizona, so I have no worries about him being in St. Louis. It's a much better ballpark or a better lineup for him. I lean Freeman, but I think for people who are watching or listening, it's very important, I think, to get one of these guys if you can. And then I think you're laughing the rest of the way. Like, there's some deep positions elsewhere. I know I want to get one of those elite shortstops, that top tier, those 6 guys, but I don't think it's the end of the world if you end up with one of these guys at first and you miss out on that. The shortstop position is pretty deep. Yeah,
I agree. And I think too, just with the way they're falling in terms of their ADP, aside from maybe picking 10th, 11th, and 12th in the first round of a 12-team league, there's really nowhere you can't take them and it not be a value. Like, I don't know. I think there's enough just exceedingly high caliber players who are 5 category guys, maybe a little bit more than Goldschmidt is at this point with the decline in his stolen bases, where to take him before 15th in the draft is probably a bit of a reach, but 16, 17, 18, like doesn't matter.
Falls right into your lap there,
Totally fine with Goldschmidt or Freeman. I think where I'm coming down to the tiebreaker here, because they are that close where you start looking at these tiebreakers, is Atlanta. SunTrust was not a good field for left-handed bats last season, but it was a really good one its first year. So maybe some of that's aberration. Maybe it all kind of just comes out in the wash. It's an average park this season. But that Atlanta lineup has the potential to be, I don't want to say the best in baseball, but it's a top 5. Sure.
I think so. It has the potential.
We're going to talk about one guy who's probably
he's the key to it. He is the key.
Possibility.
Agreed.
But if that particular guy hits like he can, this lineup is devastating.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Albies another year from him and Acuna. I agree. I mean, they bring back Nick Markakis. I mean, big deal, but he's a great hitter. He's fine.
Just stick a 300 hitter in the middle of the order. They don't need him.
He was hitting cleanup for them last year and crushing lefties. And I agree 100%. I mean, you bring back McCann, whatever. He can hit. He's got some pop. Like it's a good lineup. Yeah, it really is 1 through 9. Inciarte, you put him if you put him in the 9, whatever, get on base, make things happen with his speed. Like there's a lot to like about the Braves lineup. So I agree. That's probably why I lean Freeman slightly, but they're super close. I have no problem. I find if I don't get one of them, it's like I gotta get Matt Olson. I gotta reach on Matt Olson because I'm a big fan of his too. But I try to leave most of my drafts with those 2 guys. One of the 2.
No, I would agree. I think that's really my main goal in the second round is to grab one of those 2 guys. The next player in terms of ADP we're going to talk about comes in at number 48 in terms of picks. The first reliever off the board, Edwin Diaz. Yeah. We've had similar conversations to this a lot over the last couple of years. And I think we feel pretty similar. I don't often try to get the first reliever off the board. I just think there's a group of these guys, even if you want to go down all the way to like Roberto Osuna, who's like RP7, RP8.
That's my target.
They're all kind of the same.
Yeah.
And here's the point I really want to make about the capriciousness of saves. Because if you base it off of last year's numbers alone, I'm 100% with you. I think Edwin Diaz is the best closer in baseball. Yep. There's really no argument if you're just going off last year's numbers. But Seattle led baseball with 81 save opportunities last season. The Giants were the only sub 500 team to be inside the top 10 in that category. So you can now kind of start to wonder, like, how many games do we think the Mets are going to win? Because that seems to be a really good correlating factor to how many save opportunities you're going to have, obviously.
Yeah.
But winning isn't it. Like, it's still so random. Like, if you go through some of the lowest save opportunity teams, you still have the Nationals. They won 82 games, only 54 save opportunities. Cleveland won 91 games, 58 save opportunities. And again, Seattle had 81. Yeah, Atlanta, 90 wins, just 60 save opportunities. So this stuff is so random. It's so up and down. And I know the FIP was incredible. I know the strikeout rate was the second best in baseball. But here's the thing. If you want to take a guy who's going to strike out half the batters he faces, just take Josh Hader. Like, I think they're...
Or Yates. Those are 2 guys that I think are getting overlooked.
I know it's hard to make steadfast, set in stone rules about a draft because things change so fast. Not every draft room is the same, but generally speaking, don't take the first closer off the board.
I don't think I've ever taken it, Gary, and I don't know why. I feel like, and I think the fantasy community is in on it now. I think a couple years ago, a season like this from Diaz, and maybe he's going in the 4th, and he's fallen a little bit more, but still, it's just a steep price for me to pay. And even still with the ADP, like you mentioned, 48, that's still right in there on average as a pretty early pick, his 4th round pick. But he has to repeat that. And there's nothing wrong with having the best closer in baseball on your fantasy team.
sure.
You're ahead of the pack. I mean, it's great. I mean, the swinging strike percentage, 18%. It's second in baseball. You mentioned the saves, the ERA, 2.09. I mean, or the walks per nine, 2.09, a solid ERA round two, lower FIP. Like, all of his numbers are phenomenal. 67.5 first strike percentage is unbelievable. He improved across the board everywhere.
That's really the thing, too, is where he's an elite strikeout pitcher, it's not with the downside of like a Craig Kimbrell who might walk 4 batters per nine and kind of mess up your whip just a little bit. Like, he is, again, I think we can agree, he's the best.
Yeah, he's the best. We talked
but you
about
don't
him
want the best.
No, we talked about him a couple years ago as potentially being the best, but the command was an issue, and I saw him fix that. But it's just so tough because, again, he has to return that type of value for you. And even last year with like Kenley Jansen, you took him early and he struggled. And let's be honest, if you had him last year, you were in a tough spot. Like, you really were. And there's just so many closers. If you're chasing saves, like, they just pop up. I remember I left the FSTA draft a couple years ago. I had one closer. It was Kelvin Herrera. I ended the season with with Knable. I had like 3 or 4 guys. I didn't know what to do with all these closers. Like, they just pop up. It happens every year. It's the most abundant
stat on the waiver wire. It happens. It'll
really
happen in spring training. We'll get weird injuries during the course of the season, and then the trade deadline. If there's one thing that becomes super available after the trade deadline, it's saves. So
he's not elite. I just don't want. I mean, he's elite rather.
Yeah.
I just don't want to spend that high pick. I have an issue. I usually typically I like to leave my draft with one top 10 closer who has the upside, like an Asuna you just mentioned. I think he's a perfect target and going around.
Well, that's what Diaz was last year. I mean, that's why everyone loved him last year. He was RP7,
and then boom, he comes up and he's a top guy. So I think that's a strategy to take. And then you towards the end of your draft, you grab some of these position battles, whether it's a Minter in Atlanta, whoever it is, like somebody who you think could take over the role as a closer. But elite for sure, but he's not going to be on any of my teams. In fact, I don't think like Kimbrell or Jansen. I don't think Chapman. These guys they won't be on any of my teams.
I'm with you, and I think an important thing to remember with closers too. I always make fun of it because I hate saves. Yeah. I know they're a vital part of fantasy baseball. I hate saves. One of the things you have to think about with guys like this, and I know Rob Silver actually made a really good point about your boy. Astudillo.
Oh yeah.
Saying that the cool thing about him from the catcher position is not only does he have the potential to bat 300, but because he's going to bat 300 without ever walking, that means the average is just like, there's something to be said for a guy who goes 2 for 4 instead of a guy who goes 1 for 3, because just those extra at bats really do help your team average at the end of the week. It kind of works reverse for closers.
Yeah.
If you're only going to throw 65 innings in a season, if Diaz has 3 bad outings, let's say he gives up 3 3-run home runs, you're not getting your ERA under 2.5.
Yeah.
Like, you just don't work enough innings to get those ratios down to where they could be if you're not perfect all the time. So it can go so quickly wrong
for sure
with relievers that I think it's just best to avoid the guys who are the most expensive. And another point would be, who, not just do you trust Diaz, but who else could you get instead of Diaz? And one of those guys right around that same pick, Patrick Corbin.
Yeah, exactly.
My boy from last season. It hurts to see his ADP at 50.2 because I know you had him in a couple of drafts too. I was getting this guy at like pick 260, 270.
Yeah, this time last year we were talking about him being a sleeper and winning championships for you.
So beautiful. He is SP 15 this year. And I think just because of the history we have with him and knowing where we got him last season, it's so easy for your quickest reaction to be, he can't be worth the 50th pick. Like, how can someone jump 200 spots in value from one season to the next? Yeah. It's not as if, he's a young guy.
No.
This is, he's a veteran pitcher at this point. But I was going through some of these. I can't find the knock. I can't find the reason why I don't trust Patrick Corbin. Like, among qualified starting pitchers, 3rd in FIP, 2.47, tied for 6th with Trevor Bauer at 30.8 strikeout rate, tied for 5th in strikeout to walk ratio at 24.8%. I think Bauer is kind of the interesting one because if there were 2 guys who were sort of aligned, the 2 guys who went from outside the top 250, who were former top prospects, actually with the same team, and came just to be, they finally fulfilled their potential last season. It was Bauer and it was Corbin. And if I think Corbin's at a premium, and I don't really think that, Bauer is going like 15 spots ahead of him. So Corbin's actually the cheaper guy still.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy because I think the only knock, Garion, is what I hear and see and listen to some podcasts is for Corbin is like, oh, he had the career and a contract year. And, usually gives up a lot of home runs, 22% strikeout rate for his career, 31. But
Nationals Park is a scary park. It's a very offensive-oriented park, I will say that. For
sure. There is that adjustment. But, I mean, we've seen these pitchers before. And this is a guy with Tommy John, right? And we've seen, and he gets into a bit of a groove now. His walks have declined the past couple of years. He's found that slider. Like, that is a dominant pitch that he has through that 41% of the time last season. The FIP is lower than the ERA. There's really not a whole lot of negative aspects. I mean, his K per 9 jumps from 8 to 11. But again, like, he's got that pitch. He's got that swing and strike pitch. I mean, there's a lot to like about him. I mean, if he goes to New York, maybe I don't like him as much at Yankee Stadium, but he's still fine. Like, the defense behind him is still fine. He's not the one. Maybe he's the 2 or the 3 in that rotation. There's a lot to like about Corbin. And again, we get into Diaz or Corbin. I just think there's more value there to grab yourself a pitcher who can, rack up over 200 Ks for you and churn out over 180 innings. Like, a lot of positives for me with Corbin.
And I think as crazy as this might sound, if you go through some of his numbers, there's actually an argument that he pitched better than the numbers indicated last season. Like, I think there's still room to grow here.
Scary.
I mean, he wasn't. We talked a little bit about this when I mentioned just Zach Godley strangely leading the Diamondbacks in wins last season. Patrick Corbin should have, in a just world,
of course,
had more wins than he ended up with last season. And you look at some of the numbers he put up last year. He's one of the rare left-handed pitchers. We'll actually get to another one in a second, who is dominant against right-handed batters, which I think is such a crucial part of being successful in fantasy as a left-handed pitcher. Just a .99 whip against righties last season, but also had a 340 BABIP with runners in scoring position. That led to not a low strand rate, but like a 74-75% strand rate, which again is around league average. That's
right around there.
That's not going to set off any red flags for anybody. But if you look at the other 6 pitchers who struck out at least 30% of the batters they faced, their strand rates were up at like 82, 83%.
Yeah.
He was getting unlucky. Like maybe not unlucky.
That's why we see the FIP a little lower.
Luckier.
Yeah.
Like, he makes his own luck, and it should be better.
That's why we see the FIP a little lower. This is somebody in the DFS community I kind of picked. It was 2 years. He had 51 home runs and only 15 allowed last year, but the fly ball percentage came down a little bit.
Ground ball rate super high.
Yeah, ground ball rate was super high. I think where he's going is completely fair, and he's a target of mine.
Well, you mentioned the Yankees. Initially, were in the running for
they
Patrick
were.
Corbin.
I thought he was. I saw reports that he was at a wedding with his brother's wedding. He was wearing a Yankees hat. I'm like, he's going to New York for sure.
Everyone wants to play for the Yankees. Adam Ottavino wants to play for the Yankees. But they didn't need to fill that role of dominant left-handed pitcher because they traded for James Paxton. Because as we all know, Seattle has ADD and needs to trade at all times. I think Paxton, though, for me, is kind of another justification for where Patrick Corbin is going. I just think I trust Corbin more.
Same.
And Paxton, like, again, there's no possible knock really on Paxton, who's going 58.1 in NFBC drafts. He's SB16 right after Patrick Corbin. There's nothing really from the actual raw numbers he's produced to tell me he's, going to fall off a cliff or anything like that. Right. It's just some of the things we haven't seen, which is he's never thrown 170 innings in a season, which obviously is huge when you're comparing him to guys inside the top 20 like Max Scherzer, who you're just writing in for 230 innings every single season. The other thing that I thought was kind of interesting was all of a sudden last year, he couldn't stop allowing home runs. And if you look in the context of his career, it seems like it could be an outlier. So there's a way that you use this as an argument that he could be better this season. Because the 2 seasons prior, 2016, 2017, among the 92 starting pitchers who threw at least 250 innings, 0.63 home runs per 9. That was the lowest in all of baseball. Yeah. Like he had proven to be a guy who could suppress home runs. Last year, it jumps up to 1.29. His home run to fly ball ratio goes from 8% those 2 prior seasons to 14.4%. So again, you could say he's going to normalize this season, except he goes to New York.
I know.
It's tough. Last possible place.
It's a tough environment for him.
Save for like Cincinnati.
I know.
That you would want this guy to end up. And it just seems like that's a legitimate red flag to me.
It is. It's a concern. And you mentioned the biggest concern, and everybody knows it is health. Look at this guy the last 2 years since the start of 2017, a 2.95 FIP. That's 5th in baseball. It goes Scherzer, Kluber, him, Severino, Carrasco. He is an elite company. He's a phenomenal pitcher. He's got electric fastball.
Yep.
He's fun to watch. I mean, career high 12 wins. You feel like he goes to New York, he's gonna wins or whatever.
He's got to be
we
in the
joke
running
about wins
for
all we
18 to
want,
20
but yeah,
wins,
17, at least 17 wins, certainly doable. But you're right.
We've
career
talked
high,
about the hierarchy of the American League.
Yeah,
like the Yankees are going to win 100 games.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, and turn it over to the bullpen after 5. Maybe they limited his innings. Maybe they do that with all those relievers that they have. Maybe he just pitches 5 or 6 innings every single start, whatever it is, and so they can get him into September. But 160 innings is his career high, and his ground ball rate. So you mentioned the home runs. That probably is an outlier. I mean, in Seattle is where you want to pitch. But you're right. Yeah, this is why we liked him a couple years ago. A little, besides the fact he was a little Canadian boy, high strikeout rate, high ground ball rate. Always watched him like strike out every single Angel every time he played him. 54% ground ball rate, 48, 44, 39, and then boom, 23 home runs in a limited innings. So. Red flags concerning, but at the same time, like Aaron, if this guy has 180 innings, where does he finish? He's probably a borderline top 15 pitcher.
I would say he hits value.
Yeah, he hits value. There's just such a risk in that.
Seen it yet?
Exactly. So it's hard to pay for that price because we haven't seen it. So like when you're comparing the two, Corbin, Paxton.
It's funny though. Read off the. So he's 5th and FIP.
Yeah.
Read off the other names he was with.
He was Scherzer, Kluber, Paxton, Severino, and Carrasco.
So that's crazy company. I think we can all agree that's crazy.
Yeah.
This was maybe my favorite stat I found yesterday. So again, you talk about the ground ball rate lowering. That obviously means the launch angle is going in a direction that we don't like.
That we don't want.
Among pitchers last season with 300 batted ball events allowed, he actually had the 4th highest barrels per batted ball event at 9.4%. Now, I should say, batted ball event, much different than the plate appearance one because Paxton, much better by plate appearance because he strikes out so many guys.
Right.
So I'm fudging the numbers here a little bit, but still, this is a statistic.
Yeah.
The guys he's with in this category, because he's top 5, he's number 4, Mike Minor, Mike Fiers, Jordan Zimmerman, Marco Estrada.
Those aren't guys you want to be
home run kings,
those
man.
Aren't guys you want to be
home run
Those
kings.
are the guys I start every single DFS article as like, where's Estrada? Where's Fiers? Like, I mean, those guys are in Oakland. Maybe they can suppress the home runs this season, but those are guys that that's certainly bad company. So yeah, that's two ends of the
spectrum, man.
Yeah, that's an amazing stat.
Gene Segura. We mentioned him a little bit off the top of the show. Now a member of the Philadelphia Phillies. ADP 69.6. He is just outside the top 10 at shortstop by NFBC positioning. A lot of multi-position guys in there. So top 10 shortstop, let's just say for the sake of argument. I think the thing with Segura that always gets me, and we have a long history with this player.
We do.
I was a noted Gene Segura hater about 3 years back. I'm a robot. I often see the game strictly through statistics. As you rightfully pointed out, he's gone through a lot of stuff in his life.
He's gone through some stuff.
Seems like he's in a really good place now.
Yeah.
Not just in Philadelphia, but also mentally.
Yeah.
One of the most consistent guys in baseball.
Yeah, he really is.
You go through some of the numbers. Since 2016, here's a list of players with a 300 batting average and 70 stolen bases. There's only 6 guys on the list. And it's 5 guys on the list. It's Jose Altuve, Mike Trout, Jose Ramirez, Mookie Betts, and Gene Segura.
Yeah.
You look at the ADP of those other 4 guys. I mean, Altuve's at 16 now, but last season they were all top 10 players.
Yeah.
And Segura's going at pick 70. Like, he doesn't bring the power element that they do.
No.
The only thing I could think of that was maybe a little concerning to me was we know he's going to be a 2-category player. Like I said, he's going to steal bases, going to have the batting average.
Yeah.
Generally has been a very good 3-category player because he's always hitting at the top of an order.
Let's get some runs.
Scores runs. 273 runs in that span of time, that three season span, this 22nd all of baseball. Of his 1,892 plate appearances, all but 3 have come batting first, second, or third in an order. So he's always been a linchpin up there.
Yeah.
You talked earlier about Philadelphia possibly still having the capacity to sign Machado or Harper. This is a team that already has Kutch, Realmuto, Hoskins, Odubel Herrera, Cesar Hernandez, who people seem to think is going to be the leadoff guy.
Yeah, you got to think Cesar is in there.
Is Gene Segura going to bat 8th? Because that's kind of a concern.
Yeah, I agree. You know, we have similar notes. I got 8 question mark right here because it is a possibility, and that would hurt his value. It really would because.
But like how much?
Well, it would hurt in terms of just his runs. I feel like just slightly, you know, you get fewer plate appearances, fewer at bats. I mean, I got the same stats as you, Gary. Like 273 runs last 3 years. Like, yeah, 22nd overall in baseball, 3rd among shortstops. 308 since 2016, eighth overall in baseball. He had the best average among shortstops last season, 304. Like, you know what you're getting with him. You're getting about 90 runs, 10 double-digit home runs, and 20 stolen bases. Last time we saw him in the National League, he had 30 stolen bases and 20 home runs. I don't think he can get to 20, but again, the ballpark maybe gets him to 15 home runs potentially.
A good number.
They didn't run a whole lot last year, as I mentioned off the top. Maybe they run a little bit more this season. It's certainly possible. But yeah, I mean, if they bring in a guy like Harper, or they bring in Machado, then you wonder where he fits in. I feel like I would rather have him. Like, if I'm Philly, I don't know. I'd rather have him as my leader guy than Cesar. But
well, Roster Resource, who I generally trust. They're pretty good with this kind of stuff. They follow all the beats.
They got him 1-2, don't they?
They've got him 1-2
and
right
then
now.
McCutcheon.
Well, they've got Kutch 1, then they've got Segura 2, and they've got Cesar at 8.
Yeah, so that
would make a little bit more sense.
That would make more sense, but I mean, Philadelphia did a lot of strange things last year that I can't say that with confidence that they'll have Segura at 1 or 2, but I feel like that makes more sense, Gary. And he's a better hitter. He'll take his walks. He doesn't strike out a whole lot. And I mean, the proof is right there. And the pedigree is, and he's somebody that for the most part, I think, again, you know what you're going to get. You're not going to get a career. You're not going to get, like I said, 20 home runs. He's not going to blow anybody away. And sometimes I feel like in drafts, he falls down a little bit. Yeah. Again, the athletic mock, he wasn't going as a 6th round pick. He's like an 8.
This weird desensitization to just someone who's been so consistent across the last couple seasons.
Yeah.
But I could see this being one of those rare situations where, you know, even despite the fact he's moving arguably to a much better lineup, to a much better ballpark, maybe just the security in his role that he had in Seattle, we're going to miss that a little bit. We're going to miss just knowing that every day he's going to be in the lineup, every day he's going to be penciled in. Also, you know, when it comes to shortstops, especially in the American League and maybe the National League in 2022, you know, managers tend to like to give their shortstops a couple days off. And in the American League, Segura could have hit DH.
Yeah, for sure.
You're probably going to lose a couple plate appearances moving to the NL. But I think with what you were saying, with the level of safety he brings and the potential for this offense, if they do sign a second huge name piece, this could be an offense that scores 800 runs.
If he leads off,
even if he hits 7th or 8th in an offense that scores 800 runs, that probably still means he's like 70 RBI, 75 runs.
I was just say maybe he combines for 150 runs in RBI, and that's still very valuable. But I mean, if he leads off for this team 80% of the time, 85% of the time, he'll flirt with 100 runs. Yeah. There's no question 100%. In my mind that he'll do that. I mean,
and I think it's worth the risk.
Polanco, Minnesota, I feel like he could score 100 runs if he stays in that leadoff role. So for a guy who can hit 300 for sure, and I mean, again, did a best ball league, and best ball, you know, again, Segura probably not too attractive in a best ball league. 10th round. 10th round.
Because he's more of a floor than a ceiling guy.
Yeah, exactly. And that just goes to show that people are not in on him as a guy who is going to reach that ceiling. It's a safe floor, and it's solid. Again, shortstop position is, it's very deep. There's a lot to offer, but I'm in on him again this year.
I think it's an interesting bet to make at pick 70 because I think if he hits 1st or 2nd, there's no question he hits value this season. And you're making that bet with someone who, even if he doesn't hit 1st or 2nd, it's not like that's going to crater him. He's still going to be an elite 2 category player. So it's a bet you make because the reward significantly outweighs the risk, I think. He's just not a guy who comes with a lot of risk.
No.
So
he isn't.
I've come around. I'm on Team Gene Segura.
Nice. I mean, there was a point, I think, last year in the season, he was leading baseball in hits. I think it was like near the midway point. And again,
it was right after Seattle. Seattle was like
a bunch of singles, some doubles here and there. Yeah. But I mean, he gets on base.
Because that's the thing. That's what separates him from those guys I was mentioning. He's got a 141 ISO the last 3 seasons. So not quite at the caliber of like Mike
It depends on how your draft starts. If you're getting some power off the top, and maybe you Arenado with your 3rd pick.
Maybe you picked 6th and took JD Martinez and Nolan Arenado. This is a perfect guy to pair with one of those guys.
Yeah, for sure.
You're very right about that. Let's get really interesting, just mini tier of players just outside the top 100
I like all 3 of these
in NFBC. I definitely like 2 of them. Then we're going to have a Josh Donaldson conversation because I probably will end up liking him. It's a confusing conversation to have. There's a lot of variables with the Josh Donaldson conversation. But let's start with Daniel Murphy, who, healthier than Josh Donaldson, I guess. Seemed like he proved his health towards the end of last season. If you take out the 52 plate appearances he had in June, we want to just call that like spring training.
Yeah, the one knee.
318, 356, 496 with a 362 WOBA. He was Daniel Murphy again.
Yep.
So you take this guy who's now going around pick 100 in NFBC drafts, probably going to move up, get some helium once people see him take the field in spring training. Once people remember he plays for the Rockies.
Yep.
Because that's really the selling point here is
Yeah.
he is now a member of the Rockies. He's probably going to hit second or third in this lineup, right where DJ LeMahieu was, but do so with a lot more power. I can't really see the downside here. I think he's the perfect player to stick in Coors.
Absolutely. I mean, a contact hitter.
Yep.
Somebody who struggled against lefties last year, but normally doesn't, and missed some time with a knee injury. And you got to wonder if the timing, all that stuff. Like last year, even with the knee injury and wondering if he was going to be available opening day, he was a 4th round pick.
Yeah.
He's a 4th, 5th round pick in a good lineup, and now he's going to Coors
and
in
now
a
unless
great lineup.
something unforeseen happens, he's going to be ready for
It's
opening
nothing.
day.
I looked at his averages the last 2 years, like 24, 90, and 90. That's a top 50 player. I agree. This is somebody in a month's time that's going well above this. I really do. Spring will be key for him just to get some at bats in and just to show that he's not dealing with an injury. But yeah, his last 63 games when he went to Chicago, he was a 315 hitter. I mean, he was near the top of the lineup. He was leading off for them. He was getting on base. He was scoring runs. He looked like Daniel Murphy. This is a great. I don't want to he is declining overall.
He's
I don't want to.
He's 34 years old.
Yeah, I don't want to sit here and say, oh, he's gonna have a career year in Colorado. But this is a great place for an older guy to go who's declining.
Yeah,
he's gonna play first base. He's gonna score runs. He's gonna get on. There's a lot to like about Murphy at this price.
And I remember when we were talking about the top 20, and maybe the most surprising addition to the top 20 was Trevor Story.
Yeah.
And I really tried to find reasons to like Trevor Story, like his improving contact rate, the fact he's swinging earlier in counts, because all we want from guys in Colorado is to make contact.
Yes,
let the ballpark do the work for you.
This is what he does.
That's him. That's him to a T. High contact rate, low swinging strike rate. And even when we talk about the quality of the contact he makes, maybe he's not going to lead the league in hard contact. Maybe he's not going to lead the league in fly ball rate. But he's someone who has an astonishingly low infield fly ball rate. He's not quite Joey Votto.
Right.
But, you're not giving away at bats. Like a pop fly at Coors is no different from a pop fly in any of their 29 ballparks in baseball. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
But if you make quality contact like Daniel Murphy makes, he is going to crush it.
Oh man, how many times do we talk about, value the next year after an injury-plagued season? This is a prime example. I wanted to put him in when we talked a couple weeks ago. I want to talk about him as a sleeper. It's like I can't. And Murphy's a sleeper. It doesn't make any sense. But again,
undervalued.
Undervalued. Yeah, for sure, undervalued.
Yasiel Puig. If we want to keep using the mock we did as a barometer, Eno Saras.
I don't even know where'd he go.
I was watching this one. I was very curious. Love Eno.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense that Eno loves Yasiel Puig. I think everyone does.
Yes.
Went around pick 65.
Okay.
So when I say
that's exactly
in NFBC drafts, he's going at 101.5, know that he is someone who's going to catch helium.
Oh, for sure.
I think it's just a really, really simple formula to how we're getting from Yasiel Puig hitting 267 with 23 home runs and 63 RBIs last season to how we're getting him to possibly be a 4th or a 5th round pick, or sorry, a 5th or a 6th round pick. It's just no one's standing in his way now. No. It's a great ballpark, but more than the ballpark. It's just, this is a guy who was limited to 400 to 500 plate appearances because there were so many players in Los Angeles. He's going to play every day in Cincinnati. And if you prorate his numbers from last season to just 600 plate appearances, this is someone who could get, if he stays healthy, 680 plate appearances, but just 600.
And that's so exciting.
31 home runs, 81 runs scored, 85 RBIs, 20 stolen bases, and now he's moving to Great American Ballpark, the best home run park by ESPN Park Factors last season. So those are low estimates. So I get it. I get it, man. I really do.
I know there really is. And I know that everybody, is a smart guy, obviously. He's all over it. He knows he got to get him before everybody else jumps in on him. I understand that. But that's the biggest thing, Garion. Everyday role. Look at 2017, 28 home runs, 15 stolen bases. But last year, 444 plate appearances. 444, and he still had 23 and 15.
Yep.
Walks 9% of the time. That's his career rate. 19 strikeout percentage career rate. Like he had some seasons earlier when he was striking out a lot, but he's limited that. And at home, he hit 50 points lower at home compared to on the road last year. So boom, you go put him into great small American ballpark.
Isolated power on the road last season.
Everyday role. I'm completely in on this. Cincinnati has made some moves in the offseason. It's weird. I feel like maybe they should just stockpile some picks and whatever. But they've brought in some guys, and including some guys in the pitching rotation, and I like it, man. Since he's making some, they're
a fun team.
Yeah, and an underrated offensive team. Last year there was a point They tailed off towards the end of the season, but I think 3/4 of the way through the season, they were a top 10 offense. I was like, what is going on? Like, they're scoring some runs, even on a slight down year from Votto. But yeah, Puig he's a target of mine.
And that's the thing, too. You talk about, like, lineup construction. We don't quite know how this is going to break down yet, but I would have to assume he's going to hit cleanup.
Yeah.
So that means he's going to have Scooter hitting second, probably ahead of him. And Scooter's a very, very fine hitter.
Like, yeah, for sure.
But if you're talking about just how many plate appearances will Yasiel Puig get with runners on base, he's hitting behind Joey Votto, the king of getting on base. Like, Votto goes to sleep and spits out a 425 OBP.
Yeah, exactly.
There are always going to be guys on base for Puig. It's such an enticing. And also, I mean, even if we want to get away from the narrative stuff, like more plate appearances, better ballpark, he's just someone whose batted ball profile was getting better last season. Career low ground ball to fly ball ratio. He's just hitting more fly balls. And now he's going to be doing it at a Great American Ballpark.
It was so frustrating to see how things were with him for the Dodgers. Not just playing time, but like attitude issue, whatever it was, like some injuries popped up, maybe effort, whatever. I'm sure he was frustrated, like not playing every day and feeling like he should. This is a guy who's extremely motivated. You want to look into that narrative?
He seems really happy in Cincinnati,
too. Are you
too.
kidding
I don't know
me?
how much you can buy from
the whole
social
Instagram
media,
pic changed right away in Cincy. He's wearing the cap. Like, he's ready to go. He's fired up. And I feel like he feels like this is an opportunity for him to play every day and prove himself. This is a phenomenal ball player. And I'm super excited to see him play every day.
You're right, though. Like, if you have those, like, I have character concerns about Yasiel Puig, playing time fixes most character concerns.
You know who wants you? Cincinnati. They're going to play you every day.
Yeah. Okay. Josh Donaldson time.
Let's do it. Yeah. I mean, I don't have much to say about JD. Like, I mean, he's only played 165 games in the last 2 years. Like, obviously, he's got some issues.
Yeah.
He's got some injury issues.
Yeah. I mean, let's just start there. So the last full season we saw Josh Donaldson play, 284 average, 37 home runs, 122 runs scored, 99 RBI, career best 403 WOBA.
Yeah.
That was 2 years ago. It's not even that long ago.
No.
He's one of those prospects where, I mean, he's been notable enough lately where probably no one's surprised when you say he's 34 years old, but it still doesn't feel like he's been in the league long enough to be 34, but broken at 27. So
yeah, broken late with Oakland.
He's over the hump, I think you could say.
Yes.
And we've seen players, I mean, he very notably and very publicly, especially within the market he was playing, mirrored his game after Jose Bautista. This is around the age when we saw Jose Bautista's approach start to fail for Jose Bautista.
Yeah.
But still.
You're going to talk me out of Josh Donaldson. I know it.
No, I think I like him. And that's the thing. I like a lot of guys at third base.
Yeah.
So there's a weird tier of third base going a little bit before Donaldson and around the same. Like, Matt Chapman's kind of in this tier right now.
Chapman's interesting.
I really like Chapman.
Yep, Chapman's very interesting.
Although I don't think he quite has the ceiling of a Josh Donaldson, but a much higher floor.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like, you look at the 60 plate appearances with Cleveland. I know that's such a small sample.
Hey, but it was positive. It's positive to take that away.
Because the big worry was the strikeout rate
the
last couple seasons, but it was down to 16.7%. Same as his walk rate in that span. 240 ISO, 50% hard contact rate. It was really good. That's Josh Donaldson in a 60 plate appearance span. So you now take him, and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution already reporting that he's going to be expected to hit second in this lineup.
Yep.
That's where he scored 122 runs.
Oh, yeah. That's where he had his monster
if we think Atlanta is going to be the best offense in baseball, that's a comparable offense to that offense in 2007 or 16.
That's my thing. Like, look at his seasons with Toronto where he hit that lineup. It was so nice. Obviously, a little bit of a downgrade. I was surprised that he went to the National League with the DH, and who knows, maybe it'd be DH. I don't even know.
I think Alex Anthopoulos had a little bit to do with this.
Yeah,
there's some dots to be.
I would agree with that. They're chirping him actually in Atlanta, wanting him to make some moves and be a little bit more aggressive.
He'll get there.
He'll get there. Yeah, he'll make some moves. All right, but yeah, I mean, a little bit surprising to see him go to the NL because I thought maybe some DH for him with the injury issues. And I talk about spring training, and sometimes I kind of joke about that, but this will be key for him because if you look at the last 2 years,
you want to see him throw the ball to first base.
Yeah, and over the past 2 years, he hasn't been able to start with the team. Like, it's been a calf issue or a dead arm, like whatever it is. There's something coming back a little bit too early. I was at one of the games where he came back and he hit a double off the wall and he was rounding first, and the calf tightened up on him again. And
that was against the Angels, yeah.
Yeah, well, I was at that one, and so it's like, ceiling is still 30 home runs.
Yep,
I still think he can get there. The lineup is fine.
Probably, I think average is like the one area where we're like, he's probably like a 265.
That's what I got down here is a 260 guy, but I mean, on base percentage, willing to take his walks. He can help you in an on base percentage. But yeah, 260 is probably what we're looking at with him. But I was pleased, like you said. I think it was 16 games, 20 games maybe with Cleveland, whatever it was. But it was a strong sample. It was a small sample, but it was strong. Like, he didn't struggle at that point. He looked like a little bit of the old JD. So at this point, I'm not gonna have 100% like exposure to him through all my drafts, but I'm gonna definitely take flyers on him to see if he can get anywhere near that MVP like season, because we were drafting him as in the first round. End of the first round as the top 3 or 4 third baseman off the board. Like, we all wanted him. We saw the potential, and I still think it's there in that lineup.
It's going to be interesting to see which of these 3 guys actually ends up with the highest ADP.
Yeah, you're right.
By opening day, because I think all 3 are going to rise.
Yeah,
for
they're
different
definitely going to
reasons.
rise.
You're right. Donaldson, as soon as people see him on the field,
that's it, man.
As soon as he can play third base and stay on the field,
that lineup is going to be 1 through 5. It's just going to be top notch.
There is an interesting kind of wrinkle where, and you mentioned it would have been nice to see him in an American League lineup where he could play days at DH. I think they might treat him with kid gloves a little bit. Like, sort of how I was talking about Puig, to me, could be a guy to reach 680 plate appearances. I don't think Donaldson gets there. I think it's, even if he doesn't end up on the DL all season, I think they're probably going to play him like 140 to 145 games. Because, I mean, Johan Camargo is just sitting on the bench, and he's a very good player.
He's fine. Yeah, absolutely. I think he's going to get some at bats for sure.
Probably play shortstop a bit too for that.
Yeah, and that makes me wonder about Dansby, if he's going to get out of the lineup a little bit. Not that I care about him, but just moving around a little bit around the diamond. But yeah, JD, I mean, if he can get me flirt with around 500 plate appearances, I think I'm loving what I get from him.
I think 550 he'll bring back value.
500, I think he'll. Again, I think 30 home runs. I mean, if I'm guessing, 25 is a solid mark, but 30 is certainly reachable.
No, it's definitely an interesting list of players. And for various reasons, their values have changed, but mostly because they have swapped spots. Well, not recently, but generally recently have swapped spots in your professional life. Chris, obviously with The Athletic, why don't you tell us what they have lined up for the baseball season? Yeah,
The Athletic is, maybe you're listening to us already, the draft guide has launched, but we're coming in waves. We'll be a little bit out here and there and a little bit more here and there. It's a little bit of everything, Garion. It's a very detailed guy. We mentioned Eno, he's part of the draft guide. So it's look for that and a lot of good stuff. And yeah, still plugging away on Fantrax, doing some articles there, but it's going to be a hell of a draft guide with The Athletic.
Well, subscribe to The Athletic, follow Chris on all social media platforms, and subscribe, I guess, if you want, to me on Twitter. I'm at Garion Thorne. You can also follow my work at DraftKings Playbook and download the DraftKings DK Live app especially if you're an avid DFS player. Also, if you guys want to get into a draw for $20 DK, all you have to do is, first and foremost, like this video, then go down to the comment section below, leave your DK handle, and tell us who you think the most impactful free agent signing of 2019 is going to be. It's just that easy. We put your name into a draw, and hey, maybe you walk away with enough money to get into a Millionaire Maker somewhere down the road. So I want to thank you guys for watching this episode of the Pat Mayo Experience. I'm Garion Thorne. We'll catch you guys later.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!